Here's best-selling Christian author and teacher Eddie Smith with another spiritual warfare moment.
Hi there, this is Eddie Smith with another spiritual warfare moment. Question: what is the devil doing in your city? Now, before you answer, let me just back up a little bit and tell you that I was in a great northeastern city doing a spiritual warfare conference one day, and I asked that question. I said, can anybody here tell me what the devil's doing in this town? And 400 or 500 people jumped to their feet, threw up their hands. Some were doing little dances, and they shouted, I can, I can. I said, well, please sit down, and they all sat down. I said, to be honest with you, I'm not interested in what the devil's doing in your city. Can you tell me 10 things God's doing in your city? They looked at me like I was speaking Mandarin. I said, no one can tell me 10 things God's doing in the city? And they couldn't. I said, the reason that amazes me is because Jesus said, I only do what I see the Father doing. You know what the devil's doing in your city, but you don't have a clue what Jesus is doing. You're his helpmeet. You're his bride. How can you help him do what he's doing? How can you only do what the Father is doing if all you know is what the devil's doing? Is what the devil's doing directing your prayer life? I believe about 85% of the prayer against the devil today is provoked by what he's doing rather than what the Father's doing. Is what the Father's doing directing your prayer life? About that time, the pastor of the church came over and took the microphone. Now, I always know that somebody's going to take the microphone away from me someday, somewhere. And he took the microphone and he began to apologize to the people with tears. He said, I grew up in Africa. He said, we knew about devils and demons. In fact, we had a missionary come to our village one time and teach us the odors of certain demons. And for the next 2 years, people in the church walked around smelling each other, trying to determine which demon it must be that was. He said, that's ridiculous. He said, I know that the enemy wants our focus. And then he turned around behind us, and on the wall behind us, over what in most churches would be the choir loft, was a 30-foot banner. And it said, our focus is Christ and Christ alone. He said, my people, I have failed you. I've had you focusing on what the devil's doing instead of focusing on Christ and Christ alone. It's God who is the Lord, the captain, the general of the Lord of hosts, of heaven's host. He's the Lord of hosts, the Lord of heaven's armies. He's the one who gives the orders. We're the one who follow the orders. We're not to look for the enemy. We're not to be distracted by him. We're not to let him capture our thoughts, discourage us, or deceive us. I pray he won't. I'll talk to you later. Thanks.
Order your copy of Eddie's Making Sense of Spiritual Warfare today at www.prayerbookstore.com.